So for the last year, I released some open source components for React Native. One of them is React Native Gifted Chat. It's a chat UI that you can include in your application in few minutes, and it will manage for you all the bubbles, all the text input, and some other features. Also, I created a React Native basketball game inspired by the Facebook game in Messenger. And as you can see, it's pretty smooth thanks to the React Native performance. First, I want to introduce you React Native. So it's JavaScript framework for building native application using React. And React, so it was introduced by Facebook 3 years ago. And React is helpful because it helps you to split your applications into multiple components, making them really usable. And the most important thing is that React Native application is a real mobile app. It's not a HTML application in a mobile. Some applications already using React Native. So let's take the example of Facebook Ads Manager. It's an application built from scratch in React Native. It was the first one released by Facebook. So it's on iPhone and Android using the same code. Also, the Airbnb application, the difference is that they add an existing application and then started to implement the new features with React Native inside the existing app. And so 2 days ago, a developer from Airbnb tweeted this. He said that they are still working on it, but for now they have more than 100 screens in React Native inside the Airbnb application. So we'll create an application. We'll have 2 screens, and we'll do it in live coding. The first screen will have a form where we can put a name, then touch the next button to go to the second screen. Second screen will be a chat, and here we'll be able to send and receive some messages. Okay, so the first thing to do to get started with React Native is to install the iPhone and Android SDK. So in the documentation, you can find all the information you need regarding this. You have to know that if you want to build for iPhone and iOS, you need a Mac. You cannot do it on Windows or Linux. This is one restriction. So when you install everything, you can initialize your first project. To do this, you have to type a command, React Native init, and a name for your project. Sorry. You want it? Okay. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So if you do this command, it will generate for you a boilerplate of a basic application. And let's see this application. So it will generate for you some files like this. This one. First, it's NPM based project. So you have a package JSON. Inside, you will have the dependencies of the project. For example, by default, it will be React and React Native. And you have also here 2 folders, Android and iOS. So the Android folder, it's a real Android project. So you can have access to the Android manifest file, for example, and you can do some fine-tuning here. And in the iOS folder, you have an Xcode project. So the same way you can, for example, have access to the info playlist. And of course, you have some JavaScript code. So here we have two files, index iOS and index Android. So it is entry points of the application. iOS will use by default the iOS file and Android the Android file. So this is the project that is generated. After that, to run the simulator, you have to run this command. It will start the simulator of iOS. And by default, this is a project that you have. Welcome to React Native. And on Android, you have exactly the same behavior. To run on Android, you have to do run Android. Okay. Let's go back to the index. First thing we will do is to create the first screen I showed you before. The first screen will be this one, so it will be just a form. We'll do it. So we'll create a new file here. We'll put it inside a folder src components. We will call it home.js. And here we'll start to create our first component. To do that, you have to first import React like this. So you can import it because inside the package file you have a dependencies of React, so you can import it. Next step will be to import some components from React Native. So we will need view and text. I will show you what can we do with it. And next step will be to create a component. To do that, you have to create a class, and it will be called home, and it should extend from React component to make it a component. After that, you need to create a render method, and inside this method, you will say what you want to display on the screen. So we'll create a return function, and inside we'll write some JS code, JS6 code. It looks like HTML, but it's not. It's JavaScript, but using a syntax of ES6 called JS6. And here we'll write hello home, for example. And then you need to export this class to make it importable. So here we have our first component. I will copy it and I will create a new file. I will call it this time chat.js. It will be the second screen. And I will just rename the name of the class here and hello chat, like this. So for now we have two files, index iOS and index Android. What we want is to have only one file to share the code between the two platforms. So we'll remove everything here and also on Android. And then we'll do from scratch together. So in index iOS, for example, we will, first thing to do is to import app registry from React Native. It will be useful to tell to React Native what is the main component. So the main component will be related to the routing. So to do that, we need to call the register component from app registry. First parameter is the name of the application. We called it chat app, and then it receives a function. And this function should return a component. So we'll call it app, and this app component, I import it, and I will create just after that. So here, in this app file, I didn't create yet. I will create it, and I will share it between iOS and Android. So here, I use the app registry to tell React Native what is the root component, the first one to display. And I will do it like this. So in ES6, we have a new syntax here. Instead of writing the function like this, you can use the fat arrow like this, and to return something. So here there is an implicit return in this function. So it makes our code a bit shorter. I save this file. I will copy it in Android, and then I will create my app.js file here. And in this file, we will manage the navigation between the pages. So we'll need to import React from React. And we'll import also so the two components we created. The first one was home from it's located in components folder. We'll import also chat from same folder. And we'll need something to manage the routing. So we will use an open source one called React Native Router Flux. So inside we'll need from this open source library router and scene. To be able to import it, first we need to install it. Since it's not yet in the dependencies, to add it in your project, you have to, so this is a React Native project. Here you have to do npm install, the name of the package, and save to add it to the package.json file. We'll do it, and then it will be installed. While it's installing, we can still continue to work on the application. Here, we'll create this app component. It will extend from React component to make it a component. Inside, we'll have a render method to display something on the screen. And here, we'll have the router. We'll have also a route scene. And inside, we will have our two scenes, home and chat. So key home. We'll use component home and add title home. So here, this is the name of the route. We'll access using this value. Component is what component to use, and title will be in the navigation bar. It will be displayed at the top. We do the same for the chat. The chat screen will have a different title and a different component. And then we have to export the app component. We can save this, and we'll try here. So you saw it was loading. It's because when you run the React Native project, so first it starts the emulator, and also it starts what we call the packager here automatically. This packager is a kind of webpack, and his role is to bundle all your JS files of your project into one file and serve it to the application. It's a kind of web server, if you want. For example, if I refresh my app, you see that the server is answering with the content. And this is only for development. When you build for release, you don't have anymore the need of the packager. So here we have our first component, but we cannot see the content. We wrote hello home. It's not displayed because it's behind the navigation bar. So we'll have to add here at the root scene a padding top. So you will see that it looks like CSS, and using the style prop, we can set a value. I will refresh, and now I can see my content. What I want to show you now is, for example, in Android, I will open it and I will refresh. The position will not be the same because the navigation bar here, it's smaller than the iOS one. So here there is a margin. So I will show you how to make a condition if you want to customize Android or iPhone. So to do that, you have to import from React Native platform component. And with this, you can set a condition. If platform OS equal iOS, then you will use the value 64, or for Android, for example, 54. You can save and refresh. So it should be a bit different. So it's better now. So we can still make conditions in our application if we want something very specific. The next step here will be to add the form to the first page. We will remove the hello home here, we don't need. And the first thing was, if you can see, we have enter your name label here. Then we have a text input, and then we have a button. So it will be enter your name first. Here, we'll save and see how it's displayed. So we'll add some styling here. To do that, first you need to import from React Native style sheet, and it will allow you to create some styling. So you can declare a variable style and use style sheet create. And inside you can put your style. So the first one will be title. It will be, we'll add margin top 20, margin left 20, and let's say font size 20. And to use it, you will have to pass it as a prop to the text component, like this style, and just to pass the variable style title. You can save and reload, and you see that the style is applied here. So it's like CSS, but it's not exactly CSS. So you have to check the documentation to see what properties here you can use. So now we'll see something very useful. It's the hot reloading. So by pressing Command D, you can enable the React Native development menu, and you have access to enable hot reloading here. And with this feature, you can change your component, save the file, and automatically it will be refreshed, and you can work faster like this. Next step is to add the text input. We'll add a style. We'll call it name input. We'll have a placeholder. It will be, for example, Jon Snow, and we'll create this new style here, name input. We want 840. We'll add a border. Let's say border with 2, border color black, and a margin 20, and we'll see how it's displayed. Text input is not defined. Why? Because I didn't import it. Here, you can only use the component you import. This is not the case if you do some React for web. In web, you can already use all the HTML tag like div and so on. In React Native, this is a difference. You have to import first what you want to use. And here, you cannot use a HTML tag. It's really, you need to import only the one from React Native, or you have to create your own. So we have our text input here. We'll just add a padding. Next step will be to add a button. We'll add touchable opacity. It's a component from the React Native library here. So we need first to import it. Inside, we have to add a text. And the text button will be just next string. We'll save and see. So we have now this button. To know what you can import here, you have to check the documentation of React Native. On the left, you have the list of what you can use. For now, we just use the view, the text, and the touchable opacity. So touchable opacity, basically, it's a view with the ability to listen to the touch events. So we'll add some styling to the touchable opacity and the text. So the text will use a new style. We'll call it button text, for example. We'll add this new style, and we'll just set the position on the left and the font size. Here we have our button. Next step will be to go to the next screen. To do that, with the touchable opacity, you can pass an on-press event here. So you pass to it a function with you can use the fat arrow keyword. The fat arrow keyword is useful here because you can keep the scope of the container. So if you do this here, this is really the class. So this is useful to use the fat arrow to have access to the scope of the class. So here, the goal will be to navigate to the second screen and to pass it the name. So the name will be stored in a state. This is a feature of React. So the text input, when you will type a character, will store each character to make it accessible when we want. So to do that, we need to set a state. By default, it will be a name with an empty string. And the text input will update this name. To do that, we need to create a function here. Change text. So it's a prop. You have to use this syntax and change text. You pass it a function. This function will receive a text. It will be the text typed by the user. And we will use this text to update the name state. So we need to use this set state. In this method, we say that we want to change the name to the text value. And we need to use this value using the value prop to the text input. So here, at the onPress, for now, we'll just alert to see if we can retrieve properly this string. So let's save. We'll write hello, type next, and we can display we have access to the name. I will show you now a bit of debugging. You can use the console log here and use this state name, and then you have to enable, using the development menu, the debug.js remotely feature. And then it should open automatically a tab in your browser. It works only for Chrome. And here in the console, you have the React Native logs. I will just press enter, and so I will first need to type something, and then it's displayed here. So you can debug like this. Also, you have the possibility to add a breakpoint here using the debugger keyword. And when you do that, it will stop the code at this step. I refresh. And here automatically, there is a breakpoint here. So it can be useful for debugging. Refresh. So we'll navigate to the second screen. To do that, we need to first to import a component from our router. So from React Native Router Flux, we'll import action. This action will be used here to navigate to the second screen. So it will be chat action.chat because the root, the name, the key we use was chat. That's why. So here we'll pass the name, and we'll get the name from the state. Like this. Now we can go to our chat component, and here we will receive the name. To have access to the name, you need to use the disprops name. It's located. All the props are located inside the dis.props. So we'll try. We'll type John here. So the name is retrieved here and displayed. So here my ESLint is telling me that name is missing in props validation. It's because it's a good practice to set a default value for name in case you don't have it. So to do that, you need to do chat.defaultProps, and here you can set all your value. So by default, you can say John, for example. Also, you can set a prop types. It means that you accept only values with this type. So here we want only a string. So we need to use React prop types.string. Sorry?
Prop types with a lowercase.
Yeah, there is a mistake?
Lowercase p.
Here? Oh yeah, thank you. You're right. Thanks. Great. So here it should work. So it's a good practice. We can set here all the props you receive. Next step will be to implement the chat. So we'll use a component I created. It's called Gifted Chat. It's in few lines. Sorry, you can add a chat UI. It looks like this, but you can customize. You can change the color. You can change a lot of things. And the only things you will have to do first is to install it. So we'll go back to the terminal, and we will type this command, npm install, and it will add this component into our project. And then we have to use to do like this example. So this component, I will copy this, and then I will paste it here. So it should receive messages props. Here we'll have a list of messages to display. An endsend method, so what to do when we will send the message, and the identification of the user. So here what is interesting is that how easily it is to implement and reuse a component. So you can create components for what you want, and just by using different props, you can use the same components in different projects. So the state messages here will create like this. By default, it will be an empty array. And Here we don't need any more view and text. We can remove. So we need to import this gifted chat component from this library. So we can just check the package, the JSON here. When we do the npm install save, they are added here. So that's why we can import them. So we have our component. Second props, it's an onsend method. So here you receive the message to send, and you can send it to your backend. Okay, I think we are good with this. So now the next step will be to add some backend code. So I already prepared some code, so I will change my branch. So I will check out another branch. But first I will stop the packager to be sure there is no conflict. And then I will start it again. So what I did, I just opened a different branch, and on this branch it's the same code, but I added some codes to show you faster how to implement a backend. So a new file in the project is this one. It's a backend. Basically, it's just a Firebase backend with some methods. Here, I just initialize the connection. I have a method here, load messages, to get the messages from the backend, and I have a send message method here, and finally I close the method to close the connection with Firebase. And I will use this method in the chat. So let's go back to the chat component. And here, so first we need to import this backend file. And so for the sending, I have added my method here. I retrieve the ID of the user and the name. Also, here we have new methods. We have component will mount. First method added here. What is it? All React components have a life cycle. It means that before the rendering, there is component will mount called, and inside this method you can do some operations. Then after the render, you have the component did mount. So here I decided to load the messages from the server at this moment to first to display an empty chat, and then to add the messages just after the first render. And then we have a method component will unmount. It's called when you close the chat. For example, if you go back to the home page, this component will unmount will be launched. And I think we can try if it's working. So this is iOS, this is Android. I refresh. On the left, I will set the name Android, and on the right, I will set iPhone, and we'll try to chat. And it will be the last step of the application. So here, we'll call Android to see if it works, and the message is received. The code is available on my GitHub here, faridsafi./chatapp. Before the questions, I want to talk to you about Le Reactor. So we organize React Native training sessions during 5 days. The next sessions will be on December and January. So if you are interested, you can go to this website, Learn React Native in Amsterdam, or you can come talk with us after the meetup.
In this video, we're going to learn how to create a login screen using React Native. I'm going to start by creating a new component called login, but before that, let me create a folder called src to have a clear structure. Inside this, we're going to have components, which will contain our components from now on, and we're going to have a separate directory for each component. Inside this, we're going to have the JS file. Let's define our component. Now, if I reload this, nothing will change, because in the root component, it's still the splash that is being returned. So I need to import login from src components login, and it should return an instance of login. And if you reload it, you'll see a blank screen. Now I want to make it look nicer. So I'm starting with the background color of this screen. And I'll pick a blue color from flat UR colors again. All right. Now I want to divide this screen into two sections. The first section is the logo container, which will contain a logo and a short description of the app. So I'm going to give an empty style to it. And the second one is the form container, which will contain the inputs and a login button. Now let's add the logo image to the logo container. For that, we can use image component, which is a component for displaying images in React Native. I imported it, and we can pass the image through the source prop. So I'm making a new folder called images inside the src folder. And I'm going to copy the logo to this directory. And like Webpack, you can treat images like normal resources, which means that you can use this require function for importing an image. As you can see, it's too huge, so we need to give the dimensions of this image in order to make it smaller. And for that, I'm going to create a new style object. I'm going to call it logo. It's worth to note that the units are points on iOS and density independent pixels on Android, which means that on different devices it would be the same, so it's not in pixels. Now it's a square with side length of 100 points. In order to center it, I can use the ln item style, and I give it to the logo container. So I set it to center, and I want it to fill its parent as well. So I say flex grow 1, and if I want it to be center aligned vertically as well, I can use justify content. I want to add a short description below the logo. So I create a text saying an app made for GitHub using React Native. And let's give some styles to it. Styles that title. And let's create this object here. I'm going to give a white color to it. And let's see the changes. Let's add a space between the logo and this text using margin top. As you can see, the text is too long, and I want it to be the same size as the logo horizontally. So I can use the width style, and it can be almost the same. I guess 160 would be good. All right, and let's center it using text align, center. You can also decrease the opacity of the text in order to make it dissolve in the background. Let's say opacity 0.6. It was too low. Yeah, it's good. All right, so the logo container will fill its parent and leaves a space for the form container. And for the form, let's create a new component called login form. And I'm gonna define the component here. Before implementing this component, let's import it in the login component. So we need to import it from login form, and we have to add an element of this inside the form container. Now we want to have two text inputs here. So we can use the text input component from React Native. The first text input is the username or email field, and the second one is the password. But both of them will have the same style. So I'm going to create the first one and duplicate it. Let's reload the app to see what happens. As you can see, nothing happened, so I'm going to add a height to it and a background color. Now you can see the inputs here. Now I'm going to give transparent white to the background color. Adding a padding style to the container, we can add a space between the inputs and the edges of this component. And with margin button, we can separate the inputs. Now let's test it. Cool. But I want to decrease the alpha of the background color. But what about a white color and horizontal padding of 10 points? It looks better. We can also use placeholders for the text inputs, which will be rendered before entering any text by the user in these inputs. So the first one is username or email, and the second one is the password. Okay, now you can see it's dark, the color is not good, so you can also pass the color of the placeholder as the placeholder text color prop. Cool. Okay, now it's time to create a button. For creating buttons, you need to wrap your element inside a touchable element. And I recommend touchable opacity, which works on all the platforms. And I'm going to create an element of this, and inside that we're going to have a text. And I should import it first, and the text should say login. Okay, and if I click on it, it fades in and out. So for these two elements, we will have different styles. And for the touchable, I'm gonna add a style called button container. For the text, I'm gonna have button text. And I want it to be a dark blue. And let's add a padding vertically. And for the text, it should be center aligned with a white color. I also want to increase the padding. Okay, let's test it again. And I want to make it bold, the text of the button. So I say font weight 700. Okay, and the margin of the inputs is too high. So let's decrease it as well. It's still too high. It looks better now. There's also another problem. As you can see, the passwords are not secure here. So in order for passwords to stay secure, we need to obscure them. And for that, you can use secure text enter prop and set it to true. And as you can see, instead of the text, it will show some asterisks. There's also another problem. The users will use the app on their smartphones, so we need to test what happens if we use soft keywords. And as you can see, the inputs go underneath the keyboard, and it doesn't represent a good UX. This problem can also be solved using another React Native component called Keyboard Avoiding View. This component adjusts itself in accordance with the keyboard size, and it can have different behaviors, height, position, and padding. And I'm going to go with padding, which adjusts the bottom padding based on the keyboard's height. So I'm going to import it. I'm going to replace the wrapper component, which was a view component, with a keyboard avoiding view with this padding behavior. Now let's reload it. You can see how the padding changes as the keyboard's position changes. All right. Now let's change this return key label to something more appropriate. And for that, we can use this return key type, which can be next for the username or email. And for the password, it should be go. Now, whenever we focus on the username or email, it will show next button, and for password, it will show go. Now, whenever I click on the next button, I want it to focus on the next input instead of closing it. So I have to keep a reference of this input, of the password input, for consequent uses. So I'm going to say the input should be stored in this.password input. And whenever the return key is pressed, a function that is passed through the onSubmit editing prop will be called. So in this function, I'm going to say that the password input should be focused on. Okay. Now you can see that whenever I click on the next, it will focus on the password input. Also, this keyboard is not appropriate for email addresses. So we can use this keyword type prop, which accepts these values, default email address, numeric, phone path, for different usages. And we're going to go with email address, and let's say keyword type equals to email address. Now you can see this @ button here, which makes it easier for the users to enter their email addresses. Also, this autocorrection and autocapitalization is a pet peeve, so let's get rid of those as well. You can say autocapitalize none and autocorrect false. Okay. And the last thing, let's change the color of this status bar. For that, you can use status bar component, and you can put an element of it wherever you want in the component. I want to put it up there. And for iOS, you can use this bar style with light content. There you go. If you have any questions or comments, leave it in the comment sections below. Till next time. Hey guys, I'm Mo and I'm very excited to be doing this step-by-step tutorial for React Native. If you found this video, you probably know what React Native is. I mean, otherwise you've ended up with Objective-C or Swift tutorials for iOS or Java tutorials for Android or whatever. So I assume that you know what React is and you know JavaScript and ES6. You don't have to master React and ES6, you only need to know generally what the concepts are. So, if you have used React for web before, essentially you were using React DOM. React DOM and React were split since version 0.14. That being said, as mentioned in the release announcement, the essence of React has nothing to do with browsers or the DOM. They basically did this to make it easier to have more environments that React can render to. In this series, we're gonna build an app for GitHub using React Native, and all my code will be in a GitHub repo in this whole series. Now, let's get started. First, we need to install React Native CLI, and for that we're gonna use npm, and we need to install it globally. This is a tool that helps us create a new React Native project. And I'm gonna use this command, React Native init, and the name of our app. For this tutorial, our app name will be GitHub app. This process might take a few minutes to finish, so don't worry if it's taking too long. Mine is now almost finished, and yeah. You can see that it created a new folder, and we're going to start off in this folder. Now I'm going to open it in my editor. And that was GitHub app. And yes, this is my project. So you can see that there are two files here, index.android and index.ios. These are the entry points for each platform. It means that index.ios.js will only run on iOS and index.android.js will only run on Android. This .android and .ios specifies that this file should only run on the corresponding platform. So I'm gonna look at this file. You can see there is a template here that was generated by React Native CLI. Now let's see how this app will look like on an actual device. So I'm gonna use Xcode for simulating an iOS device. So you'll need to open this directory and go inside the iOS directory. There's an Xcode project file here. I'm gonna open it, and I can specify the device of my choice here. I'm gonna choose iPhone 6, and you have to hit this button. This will build your project, and it opens a new terminal window. That's basically the packager. This is the app. This is a Node.js app that creates the bundle, the JS bundle that will communicate with your app. And there is this app which contains native codes that can understand this JS bundle and render the view on the screen. You can see it's loading the bundle. Alright, this is our app, and it says for reloading, press Command and R. For opening the menu, the dev menu, press Command and D. And I do Command D, and this is the development menu. Okay. Let's change something to see how everything changes after saving this. I'm going to say hello here, and I'll do Command R. Now you can see the changes. There was no need to rebuilding the project to see the changes, so it works easily, and it just gets the new bundle, the new JS bundle from the packager, this packager, to impose the changes. Now, let's create a splash screen for our app. For that, I'm going to create a new file called splash.js that will contain a React component. Let's do this imports that are required for React component. I'm gonna export this component, export default class splash extends component, and we're gonna render something like a text. Let's see if it works. Hello world. Let's see what happens if we reload it. Nothing happens because we haven't used it yet. So I'm gonna import it first. Import splash from splash, and I'm gonna replace this element with a new instance of this splash component. I'm gonna reload it now, and you can see that it says a valid React element must be returned. So it basically means that this text is not a valid element for React Native. So I'm gonna import something called view from React Native. And I'm going to create a new instance of this component. Let's see what happens. We see a blank screen because this view element contains nothing. Now let's see if I can write hello world here. Now I can't. It says that hello world must be wrapped in an explicit text component. So I'm going to import this text component from React Native. I'm going to wrap this inside this text. This component is used for displaying text. Yes, it worked. You can see that it is underneath this status bar. So let's do some styles on our view component. You can use this style prop. You can pass an object like what we do in HTML and CSS. So I'm going to say that I want some red background. And yeah, it worked. So you can see that it's not filling the screen. So for that, we can use Flexbox. This React Native Flexbox is almost the same with what we have in CSS3. So for that, I'm going to say flex1. You can see that it worked, but my text is still sticking on the top of the page. So I'm going to make it vertically center aligned using this justify content property, and I'm going to set it as center. Cool. Now let's do it horizontally too. And for that, I'm going to use align items center. Good. You might have noticed that this way of writing styles is not very clean. So we can create a new object and we can store all the styles there. So I'm going to say const styles equal to this object. I'm going to say, and I'm going to call this wrapper. So we can mimic something like class names that we have in HTML and CSS. It's all right. I'm going to use this styles wrapper. Let's see what happens. Yeah, it's still the same. It worked. But the thing is, every time that an instance of this component is created, these objects are passed to the native side. But React Native comes with something called stylesheet. With the help of stylesheets, you can pass the objects once, and after that, it will only deal with some references called IDs. For the first time that you run this create function, it returns an object with the same keys, but their values are IDs instead of these style objects. And those IDs are the references to those styles on the native side. So it's better for performance to use this style sheet. And it's still working. Okay, I'm gonna add a new text here. Powered by React Native. Okay, I'm gonna make this text white. So I'm gonna call it title, color white. Yeah, it's working. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. Font size would be 35. Good. Font weight can be bold. You can see that it's very similar to CSS. And also for this powered by, I'm gonna call it subtitle. I'm gonna make it white. And I'm gonna make it lighter. So styles, that's subtitle. Oh, sorry. That should be 200. Now I got my Powered by React Native stuck to the bottom of the page. So I'm gonna wrap these text elements inside a view. No difference, still it's the same. Now I'm gonna add some styles to see the space that this view element is occupying. So I'm gonna call these styles that title wrapper, and I'm gonna add this style. I'm gonna give it a green background. Now you can see that this view is bound here. Now what we actually want to do is adding Flex1 to make it feel its parent. Yeah, and it worked. Now you can see my Powered by React Native is sticking to the bottom. Now I'm going to remove the background color. And I need it to be center aligned. So I'm going to do justify content center. Yeah, it's what I was expecting. And now I'm going to add a fancy color to the background. So I use this flat UI colors website. This color is good. I'm gonna change this red color with this green one. Yeah, and it looks nice. Let's replace this hello world with GitHub app. Now we add some padding to this Powered by React Native. So I say padding button 20. And there you go, guys. That was pretty much it. If you have any questions or comments, leave it in the comment section below. Till next time. In this video, we're going to learn how to create a login screen using React Native. I'm going to start by creating a new component called login, but before that, let me create a folder called src to have a clear structure. Inside this, we're going to have components, which will contain our components from now on, and we're going to have a separate directory for each component. Inside this, we're going to have the JS file. Let's define our component. Now, if I reload this, nothing will change because in the root component, it's still the splash that is being returned. So I need to import login from src components login, and it should return an instance of login. And if you reload it, you'll see a blank screen. Now I want to make it look nicer. So I'm starting with the background color of this screen. And I'll pick a blue color from flat UR colors again. All right. Now I want to divide this screen into two sections. The first section is the logo container, which will contain a logo and a short description of the app. So I'm going to give an empty slide to it. And the second one is the form container, which will contain the inputs and a login button. Now let's add the logo image to the logo container. For that, we can use image component, which is a component for displaying images in React Native. I imported it, and we can pass the image through the source prop. So I'm making a new folder called images inside the src folder. And I'm going to copy the logo to this directory. And like Webpack, you can treat images like normal resources, which means that you can use this require function for importing an image. As you can see, it's too huge, so we need to give the dimensions of this image in order to make it smaller. And for that, I'm going to create a new style object. I'm going to call it logo. It's worth to note that the units are points on iOS and density independent pixels on Android, which means that on different devices it would be the same, so it's not in pixels. Now it's a square with side length of 100 points. In order to center it, I can use the ln item style, and I give it to the logo container. So I set it to center, and I want it to fill its parent as well. So I say flex scroll 1, and if I want it to be center aligned vertically as well, I can use justify content. I want to add a short description below the logo. So I create a text saying an app made for GitHub using React Native. And let's give some styles to it. Styles.title. And let's create this object here. I'm going to give a white color to it. And let's see the changes. Let's add a space between the logo and this text using margin top. As you can see, the text is too long, and I want it to be the same size as the logo horizontally. So I can use the width style, and it can be almost the same. I guess 160 would be good. All right, and let's center it using text align, center. You can also decrease the opacity of the text in order to make it dissolve in the background. Let's say opacity 0.6, it was too low. Yeah, it's good. All right, so the logo container will fill its parent and leaves a space for the form container. And for the form, let's create a new component called login form. And I'm gonna define the component here. Before implementing this component, let's import it in the login component. So we need to import it from login form, and we have to add an element of this inside the form container. Now we want to have two text inputs here. So we can use the text input component from React Native. The first text input is the username or email field, and the second one is the password. But both of them will have the same style. So I'm going to create the first one, and duplicate it. Let's reload the app to see what happens. As you can see, nothing happened, so I'm going to add a height to it and a background color. Now you can see the inputs here. Now I'm going to give transparent white to the background color. Adding a padding style to the container, we can add a space between the inputs and the edges of this component. And with margin button, we can separate the inputs. Now let's test it. Cool. But I want to decrease the alpha of the background color. But what about a white color and horizontal padding of 10 points? It looks better. We can also use placeholders for the text inputs, which will be rendered before entering any text by the user in these inputs. So the first one is username or email, and the second one is the password. Okay, now you can see it's dark, the color is not good, so you can also pass the color of the placeholder as the placeholder text color prop. Cool. Okay, now it's time to create a button. For creating buttons, you need to wrap your element inside a touchable element. And I recommend touchable opacity, which works on all the platforms. And I'm going to create an element of this, and inside that we're going to have a text. And I should import it first. And the text should say login. Okay, and if I click on it, it fades in and out. So for these two elements, we will have different styles. And for the touchable, I'm gonna add a style called button container. For the text, I'm gonna have button text. And I want it to be a dark blue. And let's add a padding vertically. And for the text, it should be center aligned with a white color. I also want to increase the padding. Okay, let's test it again. And I want to make it bold, the text of the button. So I say font weight 700. Okay, and the margin of the inputs is too high. So let's decrease it as well. It's still too high. It looks better now. There's also another problem. As you can see, the passwords are not secure here. So in order for passwords to stay secure, we need to obscure them. And for that, you can use secure text enter prop and set it to true. And as you can see, instead of the text, it will show some asterisks. There's also another problem. The users will use the app on their smartphones, so we need to test what happens if we use soft keyboards. And as you can see, the inputs go underneath the keyboard. And it doesn't represent a good UX. This problem can also be solved using another React Native component called Keyboard Avoiding View. This component adjusts itself in accordance with the keyboard size. And it can have different behaviors, height, position, and padding. And I'm going to go with padding, which adjusts the button padding based on the keyboard's height. So I'm going to import it. I'm going to replace the wrapper component, which was a view component, with a keyboard avoiding view with this padding behavior. Now let's reload it. You can see how the padding changes as the keyboard's position changes. Alright, now let's change this return key label to something more appropriate. And for that we can use this return key type, which can be next for the username or email. And for the password, it should be go. Now, whenever we focus on the username or email, it will show next button, and for password, it will show go. Now, whenever I click on the next button, I want it to focus on the next input instead of closing it. So I have to keep a reference of this input, of the password input, for consequent uses. So I'm going to say the input should be stored in this.password input. And whenever the return key is pressed, a function that is passed through the onSubmit editing prop will be called. So in this function, I'm going to say that the password input should be focused on. Okay. Now you can see that whenever I click on the next, it will focus on the password input. Also, this keyboard is not appropriate for email addresses. So we can use this keyboard type prop, which accepts these values, default email address, numeric, font path, for different usages. And we're going to go with email address, and let's say keyboard type equals to email address. Now you can see this @ button here, which makes it easier for the users to enter their email addresses. Also, this autocorrection and autocapitalization is a pet peeve, so let's get rid of those as well. You can say autocapitalize none and autocorrect false. Okay. And the last thing, let's change the color of this status bar. For that, you can use status bar component, and you can put an element of it wherever you want in the component. I want to put it up there. And for iOS, you can use this bar style with light content. There you go. If you have any questions or comments, leave it in the comment sections below. Till next time.
Hello, this is Isaac, and this is part 3 of building a registration system with React Native. In the previous part, I showed you how to register a user to the database. In this part, I will show you how to log in a user and how to use the async storage to store his access token in the mobile device. So let's get into it. So this is our index file. I'm calling the login component. This is where I'm importing it. Just exactly the same like we did in the last part, in the previous part. So this is why I created most of this component. I already created it because it's the same thing. We have two text inputs. We have the onChange text callback handler. Secure text entry is true. This is for the password, and we have the button. Once the user hits submit, it's going to invoke the onLogin press method, and we're biting the disk. This is very familiar. There's only one difference here, that on the beginning we're showing here the error message, right? So this.state.error. If you remember, on the register component we use the stateless component, and let me show you. Use a stateless component. And the reason why we're not using a stateless component this time is because if we're going to have an error, it's going to be only one error message. It's not going to be an array. So let's take a look at our state here. So we have an email and the password. This is for the form, and we have the error. So I set it in the backend in a way that if there's an error, so the error message is always going to be the same. Something like email and password combination are invalid. So it makes our life a bit easier. So we won't need to loop. So this is the method on login pressed. So this is again the async await syntax, the ES7 syntax. And here we are waiting for the promise to resolve. So this is the route API login. The method is post. Even though we're not creating anything in the database, we're just authenticating the user, and on success the backend will send back the access token. So it's a JSON content that we're sending in the header. We're using the JSON.stringify again to convert it to a JSON object. And in this case, we are hitting the session controller. So that's why I'm using here session and not user, like what we did in the register component. This is simply a Rails convention. Okay, so let res, which is shortcut for response. So this is going to be the response, whether it's a success or a failure response. So we're using this if statement to differentiate between the two. Let's tab these a little bit. So far it's all the same, and let's log in a user. This is an error, and in this case it shouldn't be an error. So first of all, you see the error message has vanished because on success I'm setting the state of the error to be an empty string. Okay, and this is the response that we got. Response token 55VV. And indeed, this is the same access token, just like in the database. So it's working. It's the same thing. You see how easy it is? So once you do it once, you just copy and paste your code over and over again, and you just change your route, change the data that you're sending. But it's pretty much the same. I mean, these two input fields are exactly the same like in the registration form. Even the button, we're just changing here the method. So now I want to talk to you about the async storage. This is like the local storage of the mobile device. So this is going to be a perfect solution for us to store the access token because first of all, it's global. So because it's global also you need to be careful, but in our case it's only an access token, so we will be able to fetch it no matter where we are in the app, no matter what component, what file, it doesn't matter. And we're going to get a promise back, which means we can also use the ES7 syntax, the async await syntax. So this is the key value storage. So first of all, we want to create a constant which is going to be the key. I'm going to call it access token because it's really going to be the access token. So anytime you want to get your token from the storage, you're going to use this key. Okay, so let's create our first method. So it's going to be async, and we're going to call it store token. And it's going to accept an argument, which is going to be the access token once the user logs in successfully. Okay? So it's going to be access token, and first we need to try. So this should be familiar, and then we need to catch. In this case, it will throw the errors for us if there are any. So console.log, something went wrong. And here all we need to do is to do await async storage. We're going to set the item, and also I imported it right here. Okay, so don't forget, you need to import it, otherwise it's not going to work. So this is our key, and this is going to be the value that it will receive. And then once it's happening, I'm not going to console.log anything, but what I am going to do is I'm going to invoke the get token method because we want to make sure that it really worked. We don't need to pass anything. All we need to do is to copy this, paste it, because these are pretty much the same, so we need to do a little fixing. We won't be needing any parameters. This is going to be get. We won't be needing this either. And we're going to console.log the token. So token is token. And we need to create this variable, of course. So let token equal gate item. So this won't make any sense. It's not going to be good. Let's make sure that everything is okay. Async storage, we're prefixing it correctly. And we have one more thing to do is once the user is succeeding to log in, we will invoke the store token. And we're going to pass it the access token that we are defining here. Okay, let's take a look. Let's clear our console. And let's log in J first. Let's log in. And token is 55AV, so it's working, right? So this is coming from the get token. And this is the same. Now let's log in the other user. Very annoying that I just can't select everything and delete it. Johnny, let's log in. The same thing, but this time it's the correct token. WLV. So it's working. So we can store the token, we can get the token. Look how easy it is. This is very, very easy. And in fact, let's punish the user that if he fails to log in, we will remove his token permanently. Well, not really, but let's practice. Let's practice this. So we're going to remove it. We won't be needing this. But what I will need is we're going to call this get token. So right now the token exists, and even if we will refresh the app, it's still there, right? Unless we remove it. So now we're going to remove it. Let's make sure that everything is okay. Everything is okay. And we're going to need to call this method. So, remove token. Okay. Let's take a look. Log in. Token is null. Token is null because we just removed it and then we call the get token method. So this is how you remove a token. Remove, get the token, store a token. This is very familiar syntax, right? So it makes sense. If you want to get a token, so you need to set a variable to be equal to the token, and this is going to be get item, remove item, set item. So this is the main part that I wanted to show you in this episode. Okay, and what are we going to do with this? Basically, just like we did, like I showed you in the first part, that we want to verify the token. So we get the token, we want to verify the token against the database, against the backend API, and if we're getting a success response, then the user is logged in and we will pass him to wherever we want to. But this is the shield, this is the base of this whole app, this async storage, because we're going to rely on it heavily. Okay? So this is it for tonight. Yeah, here it's tonight. It's 10:18 p.m. Friday night. You see what I'm doing for you guys? I'm not going out. Okay, so let me know what you think. Leave a comment below. Again, any suggestions are welcomed. I would love to hear what you have to say. As you can guess, I'm also kind of a beginner in this, but it is working, right? So that's the point of it. So thank you for listening. Have a great day. Hello, this is Isaac, and this is part 4 of building a registration system with React Native. Today we will talk about navigation. So in React we have the navigator component. And I have my boilerplate project, as you can see already, And the only thing I'm doing here is I'm calling the root component. So go ahead and create it. You need to import it also. And also go create the home component. Down below, you'll have the link to the full source code. So go ahead and extract whatever you need. I'm going to also put a link to another article that talks about the navigation. It's more in-depth tutorial because I will only touch what's relating to our registration system. So if you want more, then go ahead and take a look. It's from the Medium website. It's a pretty nice article. So let's begin. So I'm calling the root component. The root component currently has only 2 buttons, familiar syntax, right? So now our goal is to generate all the components for the navigation. So in this case, we need to import the navigator component. We have the initial route. This is like the home page. In this case, it's going to be the root. And render scene, it renders the scene, right? It renders a specific component. So it can render the login scene, the register scene, and so on and so on. So let's first remove this because we don't want to insert components manually. We want to use the navigator. And I already imported it right here. Okay, so here it is. So first we need to do the initial route. It's going to be double curly braces. We're going to call it, the name is going to be root. And we're going to render the scene. Now we won't render it here. We're going to call a method. That render scene, we're going to bind this. So we can just call it here, render scene. And it's going to automatically accept 2 objects, the route and the navigator. So the route will automatically have the route name, this name. So I can do route.name and it will give me root. The navigator also has many methods. Among them, it has the push method, which you can use to push new scenes, and we will use it a lot. So I can do navigator.push and push the login scene or push the register scene, whatever. So I can do something like if route.name equals to root, then we simply want to return the root and we want to pass the navigator as a prop. The reason we want to pass it because if we will not pass it, navigator, if we won't pass it, we won't be able to get out of that view. We will only stay there forever. Because if I pass it as a prop, then I can just go and right here do something like this.props.navigator.push and push another component, another view. So this is very important. And we're just gonna 3 more times for the other components. So we have the register for the other views. And register, and this is gonna be login, and for the last one, it's gonna be the home component. So the home component is whenever the user is successfully logging in or registering, then this is what we will present to him. We'll redirect him directly to this route. So first, let's begin with the route. So currently still, well, first of all, it's working, right? It's generating it through the navigation and not manually like before. But the buttons are still not working, so let's take care of that. So we have 2 buttons. Let's add the onPress event listener. In this case, it's going to be called it's going to call a method. We're going to call it navigate, and we're going to have to bind the this. So the first parameter, the first argument is that this is the context of the this keyword, and we're setting it to this. But the second one, we're going to pass the name of the route. In this case, it's register. So we can just copy it and paste it right here. And this time we're going to call it login. And let's create it. So it's navigate. It's going to accept the route name. And remember, we're passing the navigator as a prop. So this.props.navigator.push. Now, whatever I pass here, right? In this case, I'm gonna pass the name of the route, which is going to be the route.name. Whatever we pass in this push method, it's gonna be available in the render scene as a property of the route. So you see we're doing route.name, it's still gonna work, it's still gonna recognize it. And I can pass many more. I can pass food or whatever. It will have it, I can use it. But for our purposes, at the moment, this is what we need to do. So let's make sure it's working. So if I click register, it's working. If I click login, it's still working. This is very good. Okay, so now let's take care first of the register component, right? So what do we want? Once the user is registering successfully, we want to take him to the home view. So let's do it. So we have here the successful handler. It's right here, and this is the access token. So let's pass the access token to make sure that it's working. This time I'm going to call the method redirect. I'm going to pass it the name of the view, which is going to be home, and I'm going to pass it the access token. Okay? So let's create this method. We can create it right here on top. Redirect. It's going to accept the route name and the access token. I'm going to call it token in this case. And again, we have available the props, the navigator. So this.props.navigator.push. And I'm going to pass it the name, which is going to be the route name. And we're also going to pass it the prop. Now, because it's a prop, and we might have many more props, we'll create another new object. And in this case, we're going to call it the access token. It's going to be equal to the token. Okay? Now, the question is, how does the home view going to know about it, right? So first, once we hit the home, we're passing the navigator as a prop, right? But we also want to pass the other props. So we're going to use the rest parameter, 3 dots, and we're going to do route, because remember, everything is available as a property of the route. Whatever I pass through the push method, it's available. So I can do pass props. So once I do this, right, pass props, and we have here the access token, so I can do now this dot props dot access token. But before that, I have to pass the props here. The only time you need to pass the props to the constructor and to the super is whenever you want to use this dot props in the constructor itself. If I want to use it here in the return only, then that's fine. I don't need to do it. Okay, so in this case, we will do this dot state dot access token. So it can work. Technically, I don't have to use this state, but I'm going to use it. I can just go directly to the props, but let's use it. So, okay, it should work. Let's take a look. Let's first of all clear our console here. Let's register another one. Let's call it Noel. I'm running out of names. Noel. Let's type his password. So if you register the user, well, your new token is RBD. Let's take a look at our website. RBDE. So it's working, right? So let's rehearse what happened, okay? We have the index. We are calling the navigator component, and the initial route we are setting is going to be the route. Let's refresh. This is the initial route. And this is how we are loading it. Every view you need to load for the render scene. So since the name here is root, so we're running an if statement. If the root name is root, then return that one. And we are passing it as a prop, the navigator. In the root view, we have 2 buttons. Once the user clicks either on register or login, it will call the navigate method, which accepts the route name as a parameter, as an argument. And then, because the navigator is available as a prop, so this.props.navigator.push. So we want to push to another scene. And we're passing it the route name. Now, because whatever we pass to the push method is available, like we said, it's available as the property of the route right here in the render scene. So now if we pass register, it will hit this if statement. If we pass login, it will hit this if statement, and it will load that view. Okay? So now we need to take care, oh, and also how did this work, right? So we had the register. So unsuccessful, we're calling the redirect method, and we're passing it the route name and the token. So the token is right here. We are declaring another object, so we want to separate it, right? So we have the view name, which is obvious, right? The route name is obvious, we're going to pass it, but if we want to pass another props, then maybe we want to pass 10, 20 props. So let's create another object. So I passed it already, and I made it available at the home view through this rest parameter. This, no matter how many props we have, it will be available here. And then, well, I had to add props to the super and to the constructor. And I'm just setting the access token to be equal to this.props, because it's going to be available as a property, access token. And as you can see, it worked, right? So let's do the same thing with the login. I can use the same method exactly, actually. It's going to be the same thing. Don't repeat yourself. Alrighty. So on login, this is the successful login. So this.redirect home, and let's pass it the access token. Okay. Let's pick one. Let's pick J at this time. Login. j@j.com. Okay. Login. It's 55EV. Indeed, it is. So this is the basic of the navigation that we will use. All right. It's working, it's easy again, and as you can see, once you do it once, you just copy it and paste it. Because most of the task here is going to be the same. In our app, we don't really need to do anything else. We already know how to redirect the user, how to navigate him. So it's pretty basic stuff, okay? So if you have any questions, please leave a comment below, and have a great day. Hello, this is Isaac, and this is part 5 of building a registration system with React Native. Today I'm going to show you how to manage the user state. If you didn't watch the previous part, go ahead and watch it, otherwise this part won't make any sense to you. So let's get into it. So we have a couple of users to play with in the database. So what does it mean exactly to manage the user state? So we need to know if the user is logged in or not. Now, you keep in mind that the API is stateless. The API only serves as the gate for getting data or posting data, but by no means it will tell you if the user is logged in or not. This is our job to define it in the client, in the mobile app. Okay, so how can we do that? So we know that the user, when he logs in or registers, he has the access token, right? And I already showed you that once he logs in, we're going to store the token. So he's logging in, and on success, this.store token, and pass into the home view. And this is the method. So what we can do, this is our root view, right? When the user is launching the app for the first time, we can't know if he's logged in or not yet, right? So first it will upload this root view, right? But what we can do here, the first thing we can do is to verify the access token. We can do a little bit of checking, right? So we can check the async storage, see if there's a token over there, and then verify it against the API. If we're getting back a success response that the access token is valid, then that means that the user is logged in. And instead of redirecting him to the login page, we will redirect him to the home page or view, whatever you want to call it. So this is very simple to do it. We're going to use a lifecycle component. Component will mount. Invoked once, both on the client and server immediately before the initial rendering occurs. So this is good for us because we want a method that works as fast as possible. So we will navigate the user in case he's logged in to the home view as fast as possible. So we can do like component will mount, and we'll simply want to get the token first, right? Because we can't do anything without a token. So let's write that method. So get token, and again we need to import the async storage, and we need to set the constant variable, the access token, because we're going to use this. This is the key, right? This is the key, and we want to get its value. So if you remember, we're going to use the async syntax, so we need to prefix it, and we're going to use try, and if it fails, we're going to use catch, and I'm just going to console.log that something went wrong. And over here, we're going to fetch an error. And what we're going to do here is simply define the access token variable equal to await. I missed that. Async storage dot get item. And we're simply going to add in the constant. Now, this is a little bit, well, it's not tricky, but we can't just count on this error to work, right? Because this is serious stuff what we're doing here. We are checking if the user is logged in or not. If we make a mistake, who knows what's going to happen? He's going to have access to data that he's not supposed to have access. So we might get an empty value. So let's check for that too. If there's an empty value, it's lowercase. Because if we have an empty value, if there is no access token, then we will simply console.log token not set. Okay? But if we do have a token, then we verified already twice, right? First we are covered here in case there's an error, then nothing's going to happen. And in case it's an empty value, we're also covered, right? Because nothing's going to happen. By nothing is going to happen, I mean we won't redirect the user to a view which he's not supposed to have access to. And here we're simply going to do this. We can use the navigate actually in this case. See, I got confused here because technically we are redirecting him, right? But he also has the option to navigate, so I didn't know which proper name to use, right? I'm not going to repeat myself just to change the name, so let's stick with navigate. But even though it's a redirect. So we want to navigate him to the home view. That's simple, right? So this is the simple part, right? But we still need to verify the token, right? So before we do that, well, actually, no. We don't need to navigate him to anywhere, right? We need to verify the token. This is my mistake. We first need to verify the token, and we will pass the access token. When we verify the token, if that went successfully, then we will navigate him. And because it's pretty long to write, it's not that long, but it's long enough to waste a couple of expensive minutes. I'm going to paste it right here. Okay, so again, async await syntax ES7, it's getting the token as an argument because we're passing it right here. And so if token is verified, we will redirect the user to the home page. Right, so yeah, I already have it here. Now this URL, if you can take a look, it's getting a little bit weird right here, right? So first, because we are using the get method in this case, then we are not allowed to use the body to pass data. We're just going to get an error. So this is how fetch works. And my Rails app is expecting to receive the data in this format, session, and then access token. So this is just URL encoded, but this is what it means. So basically equal to this and equal to the access token. This is what I'm passing in the URL because this is the Rails conventions in this case. Your backend, again, might be different. So this is it. So if again we're getting a good response, then we're going to handle it successfully and we're going to navigate the user to the home view. And if not, well, he won't be navigated, so we're just going to console.log the error. So this, let's test this. Let's reload. Okay, so we're getting some error. Let's test that out. Unexpected token at line 21. Okay, so line 21. Oh, capitalized diff. See what happens when you type and speak? Don't do twice at the same time. I'm not a woman. What can I do? Oh, it's working already because I have a logged in user. Right? How can I get rid of it? Well, first, just to prove to you that it's really working, if I take this out, then it's not going to navigate, right? But we are navigating. And if I want to console.log the response that comes from the database, so we can do it like this. Response is response. And before I save it, let me just clear the console. Let me just open it and clear it out. Okay, it's pretty clear. So let's save it. Response is verified, right? This is what I'm returning back from the backend. So we are verified, the user is verified, he's logged in, taken back to the view. And this is what we did. So we have one last step in managing the user state in the logout state. Now the logout state is pretty simple because we don't need to hit the API. All we need to do is to delete the token and redirect him back to the root. And then in the root, it will try to verify that token that doesn't exist, and it will get an error back. And the user will stay there until he decides to log in again. So I'm going to add here, we are here in the home view. I'm going to add the button, touchable highlight. This should be familiar. And on press, it's going to call the onLogout method. I already created it, so I'm just going to copy it and paste it. I'm going to paste both of them. Okay, and let's do it right here. I'll just put this above, just makes more sense. So the user hits the login button. Here it is. It hits the onLogout method, and the onLogout method calls the delete token method. And what the delete token method does is just removes the access token, which we already created here, the constant, and we need to import it, which we already did. And then we redirect him to the root. And if there's a problem, then we'll console.log this, right? So let's test this first. So we click logout, and let's see, we might have a problem. Something went wrong. Okay, so let's test it out, right? So we have the onLogout button, right? We're binding to this. User clicks on the logout, goes to this method, and we want to remove the access token, and then we want to redirect to the root, right? But there is one problem, of course. We have no redirect method, so let's take care of that. Okay, let's copy this one. It should be exact same, I believe. Redirect, get the name. We're not going to pass any props at the moment, we don't need it. And let's delete this one too. Okay, now let's check it. Okay, so it did remove the token, right? But it failed here. But it did work technically because it's not redirecting me anymore to the home view again because it did delete the token. So let's log in again and log out. Let's log in. Okay, so now it's working. I refresh the app. It will redirect me automatically. And if I log out, you see I'm logged out, right? So it is working. Now it's expecting to have the token, but yeah, we need to pass the token technically. But I'll leave it for the next part. It doesn't really matter. We don't really need it at the moment. So this is how we manage the state. Pretty simple. The API is stateless. So we verify the token every time the user launches the app. We do it in the root view because this is the home page. We use the component lifecycle, the component will mount, which is right here. No, that's in the root actually. Component will mount. We get the token. If there is a token, if it's not an empty value, we then verify, right? Because we don't want to verify nothing. It won't make sense. We verify the token. If we get a valid response, and you've seen the response, we will get back verified. Then we navigate the user to the home view. And on the home view, all we need to do is to let him click the logout button, invoke the onLogout method, which will invoke the delete token, and we just delete the token. So the API is stateless, so we don't need to call the backend for the logout process because we have nothing to verify. We only need to remove the access token. So this is how simple it is, right? It's not difficult at all. So if you have any questions, please comment below. Until next time, have a great day. Hello, this is Isaac, and this is the final part of the Building a Registration System with React Native series. Okay, so we're going to make it quickly. I'm showing you now the completed app, and I'm going to go step by step and explain what each method is doing. Since we don't have much to do anymore, it will be very fast. So I went ahead, remember in the last part we stopped and we had the logout button, right? So we managed the user state, we logged them in, and we logged them out. And we verify the access token. Now we want to let the user to update his account or delete it, right? So let's begin. Let's first handle the update account. How is this working? So we have the home view, right? And by the way, I added here the lifecycle method, a component will mount. I added this so we can get the token right on the spot when the view is loading, and we're gonna set this access token state right here, right? Because we're gonna need this access token once we navigate the user to the update view, because we're passing it as a prompt. Okay, so now let's take a look. So I added the buttons, right? Again, it is familiar, nothing new, nothing different. This one is gonna invoke the redirect method, and it will redirect the user to the update. And this one is gonna confirm delete. This is the delete button. We will tackle this very soon. So what do we have in the update view? Well, first we have the access token, and we're accepting it as the props, right? And we can do it because of these two, right? We must add it right here. If you won't add it, it's not going to work. And I'm just going to show you what I mean. Let's delete this. Let's go to the update view. And again, you see it verified the token, and it redirected me back to this home view. And cannot read property access token of undefined. So we have no access to the props in the constructor. I could, however, type it here in the return and it will work. But for some reason it's unavailable in the constructor, right? Let's take it back. It's going to refresh, redirect, and update account. Okay, so this is very similar to the registration form. It's the same fields, same button, just different syntax, different word. We're using update. And we are prefetching the user's data so we can fill out the form to be user-friendly. So let's take a look. How is this all done? So first we have the lifecycle method, right? Component will mount. And again, the component will mount, if you can see here, immediately before the initial rendering occurs, if you call set state within this method, render will see the updated state and will be executed only once despite the stage change. Sure, this is perfect for us. We could use a did mount, I believe, but it really doesn't matter. So let's take a look at our fetch users data. So fetch users data, we're hitting again the API. We've been through that. We did so many calls to the API, so you should be perfect by now. Getting the API, getting the response, if it's success. In this case, we need to parse it because we're getting an object. Now, when I built the API, I said that on success, it will return only the name and the email of the user. We don't need the password. We don't need definitely the access token because we're getting it from the async storage. In this case, we're getting it through the props. But we don't need anything else. We only need these two fields, right? So if I'll take a look at our console, and you can see data is name, data is email, right? It's coming from this console.log. So in my database in the backend, the email column name is email, and the name column name is name. That's why these are the keys. So I can set the state dynamically because I'm using here the same names, email and name. Now, keep in mind, I can remove this. And it's still gonna work. Why? Because technically I'm setting the whole state. So once I set the state, that state is available to us, right? But because I want to make it clear, right? If we come to this app in a month, so